All right, let's get started. Thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to the Big Data and AI Toronto Conference for having me speak today. My name is Lindsay Kulkin. I'm an AI Success Director at DataRobot. I oversee our customer engagements in the New York metro area, focusing primarily on AI adoption and value realization with our enterprise customers. Previous to DataRobot, I was the Director of Customer Success at Merlon Intelligence. It's an AI-driven startup focused in financial crime compliance. And previous to that, I was working in technology strategy consulting at Accenture and worked in AI research through the National Science Foundation. So looking forward to today's talk, and please feel free to use the chat for QA throughout today's session. So as you see in the abstract for today's talk, I'm going to be sharing some interesting insights that we've really consistently seen across large organizations, particularly around AI investment and AI transformation, and what has really differentiated some of our more successful customers, and in my opinion, our most successful customers, to scale their AI initiatives and drive true business impact through large culture change. So I wanted to start off with this slide, mostly flashy statistics, but also, I mean, this slide won't really surprise anyone who's especially attending a big data and AI conference, but the point I really want to drive home here is that we're at a point now where most large companies fully understand the value at stake from more broadly adopting AI and machine learning. And we've seen, honestly, for years across Fortune 500 organizations, but also many organizations, small, medium businesses even, have made really a tremendous and significant investment, especially at Fortune 500, in AI, and the pace of investment is continuing to accelerate at about 44% annual growth year for year. So pretty tremendous investment for the past several years, and just seeing that double-digit growth really moving and accelerated at really a rapid pace. And we've reached a point now that adoption is becoming commonplace. I mean, companies are focusing on driving adoption and focusing on really becoming sort of that ideal AI-driven enterprise where they can achieve the value targets they set out years ago when they made this investment, and make sure that they're really seeing the ROI that, I think 2.9 trillion is on here, really seeing the huge business value that they know is the potential for AI, and seeing fully through the realization of that through driving adoption and driving large culture change. But the challenge with AI is that, and I think depending on what role you're in today, the challenge to you might be very different, but at a high level, challenge with AI is that success and scaling success with AI is challenging. I mean, market surveys show that 90% of AI projects have obstacles in building and operationalizing AI. And what's worse is that, often an AI project, even after you've made it all the way through to production, there's often little to no attention spent to how it's performing in production over time. So for a lot of folks on this call who might have a background in AI or machine learning, if you've taken your project from figuring out what you want to focus on, going through problem framing, data prep, modeling, deployment, and then getting it into production, and then just sort of setting and forgetting it, that is wild to me that happens, but that's honestly really common, and especially with customers that we speak to who are interested in investing further in AI, maybe in a platform like DataRobot or another machine learning platform. It's truly is very common, and it's particularly interesting to me because any machine learning model I've ever worked on, when you put it in production, that's just the beginning. I mean, it feels like you've taken forever to get there, but you get into production, and then you need to make sure that you're still training your model on a data set that's accurately reflecting the market, it's accurately reflecting your business. And if you're leveraging training data from when you started building that model, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months ago, and so much has changed in your market or your area of the business, it's no longer going to be performing at the accuracy that you originally intended. So this, for me, is really a big blocker for most organizations. And not to go on a tangent, but I think making sure that you're continuously refreshing your models is something that I'll talk about in several slides, but really should be top of mind as you think through, how can I execute against my AI initiatives, and how can I scale those AI initiatives to really see the utmost value in what I'm working on today. But in these particular cases, AI initiatives, and this is what we share or discuss often with business leaders at many of our customers, they need to treat AI initiatives as if they were strategic business assets, or business critical systems in their organization. It requires change management, executive sponsorship, accountability, and most importantly, starting with the business problem. So, and again, I'll get into this in the next few slides, but when you're thinking through your business problem, starting with the business problem and not the machine learning problem. And I know for me at the start of my career, I always started with the machine learning problem. I was just very focused on, well, I know this is the art of the possible in machine learning and this is what I can do. But in execution, unfortunately, that is see, but really what we really, when we're working with some of these more successful customers who really seeing tangible ROI from their investments, they're going the complete opposite. They're training their business users, or they're training individuals within the lines of business to think through, okay, I'm doing this day to day. Wow, I wish I could have a prediction for this. And then I've been training them to identify those opportunities for machine learning, and then working with their data scientists or citizen data scientists, as we refer to them as, to really be able to drive business value for their specific problem, as opposed to trying to take a machine learning problem and find the business problem. So this is another thing I think is extremely critical, especially as you think through scaling AI in a meaningful way across your organization. But if you look across, honestly, any industry or any function, there are many, many common obstacles that we typically see. In New York, we have a lot of highly regulated industries, financial services, in terms of banking, capital markets. We have a lot of pharmaceutical here. Those are often, there's very specific challenges to those industries. And I think anyone who works in government can probably appreciate that as well. But there are tons of obstacles that at least I've seen very common in any industry or function. And most of them are listed here, but really starting at the top of use cases. In most cases, there are hundreds of potential AI use cases. I mean, if you look, especially in a large organization, you're looking at use cases in the context of the business or where you're generating your revenue, and then also looking at your enterprise functions. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of use cases. We ran an AI road mapping workshop several months ago, and with one specific team of maybe 15 individuals, and identified 69 use cases. So this is one small team at a financial services firm. If you're a large organization and you're a marketing team that is much bigger than that, then you could be looking at hundreds. So really, in a lot of cases, they exist, they just haven't been identified. And even if they haven't been identified, in a lot of cases, they're not typically well qualified or properly framed. The next point here is, given even unlimited resources, you can attempt to tackle all these use cases. There are very few companies that have the capital or the ability to hire and retain a large team of data scientists. Even if you have a problem, it's important, and you just throw resources at it, it's not typically going to solve your problem. But if you have a prioritized or systematic and prioritized way of evaluating those use cases and matching those up with your data science resources, this truly has resulted in tremendous impact, at least across our customers, from not focusing on the wrong things, or allowing them to focus on the right things, I should say, and making sure that they're focused on high value opportunities as opposed to sort of data science projects. And then the last two items I'll just touch upon quickly. Of the projects that get started, very few actually get deployed. And then lastly, I think I mentioned this stat before, only 1% of AI machine learning models that go into production are actually monitored and governed in a way that can have long-term impact on the business. So pretty common. I think hopefully some of these resonate with you, anyone on this talk who's actually attempted or developed, or maybe you're a lot further along than some of our customers we've talked to. But I think these are pretty common, and at least have resonated for me through my experience in the AI space. So I want to spend most of my talk today really focusing on this slide. How have most of our customers, or most successful customers, and AI-driven customers, overcome these common obstacles that are on the previous slide? And honestly, quite a few different ways, depending on the business problem. But they're all rooted in what we call foundational enablers. So really, I want to say 5 here listed. The first one, and I think it's the most important to really think through and kind of pause and reflect on what that means in the context of your business, or maybe the business that you work in. But it's relentless, pragmatic AI education for the entire organization. So this isn't just about teaching everyone about a sexy algorithm, like a lot of the nerds, maybe there's a lot of nerds like me on the call who appreciate something like that, but it's not about just teaching about a specific algorithm or how to program in Python. Instead, it's very pragmatic education focused on creating value for the entire organization. So it helps people within the lines of business who don't sit in a data science team or a software engineering team, but really teaches them to think through, what am I trying to accomplish with AI or machine learning? What is the right question I should be asking? And so they could think through and be able to proactively identify opportunities to leverage predictions within their day-to-day or within their core business process. The second one is value-focused, automation-first, agile data scientists. So many data science organizations, from our experience, are not always focused or driven or maybe not even motivated by delivering high-value use cases. They're focused on science projects in some cases, or they want to build 100 models by the end of the year, or they want to build X number of models in Y amount of time, which, for some organizations, that's great. You can have the ability to do that, but most need to be tied to value. If you have a high-performing data scientist and they're extremely expensive, you want to make sure that they're being tied to value and business outcomes, and that the models that they're building today result in tangible business results to really warrant someone of that caliber in that team, and that you're getting the benefit of your investment there. So in order for them to make greater contributions beyond, if they are leveraging or they are going down the path of a data science project, they have to really adopt how we think about it as an automation first mentality that allows them to accelerate production and really reduce that backlog of AI projects so they can focus the majority of their time on more strategic projects. So if you're working in a data science team today, or you're part of one yourself, I'm sure you have a long list of projects that you could be working on. Some of them seem sexier than others, but really making sure that you have that prioritized list that's very value focused, but also considering both value and feasibility and going after those high value, maybe medium to low feasibility opportunities where you can drive immediate impact to where you're working on, and focusing on something that's a bit more strategic and enabling others in your organization that maybe don't have the same skill sets that you do as a data scientist or that your colleagues do as data scientists, and have them focus elsewhere. The fourth one I definitely want to make sure we spend some time on is the Machine Learning Operations and Governance Center. So this is really mostly in banking. We've seen this pretty mature. Other organizations, they're coming up to speed, depending on sort of where your governance and policy is at today. But establishing a Machine Learning Operations and Governance Center for model deployment, monitoring, and governance to really ensure that your data scientists and what we call citizen data scientists, or your software engineers, your data engineers, your business analysts, anyone who's leveraging a platform where they can leverage machine learning models, anyone who's building any model across your organization, whether you call them a data scientist or not, that they're communicating well with this center, this part of the organization, to ensure monitoring governance are appropriately in place for AI and machine learning. And the last one, this is kind of overarching across all of these, is having an AI transformation strategy. So organizations who really follow these foundational enablers will be able to successfully deploy a number of AI models across the organization. Each of these models has the potential to deliver incremental business value, but having a unified AI transformation strategy helps to really focus efforts so that the combined benefit is more than just the sum of the individual impacts. So it's about really having AI embedded truly into the DNA of the organization, so everyone is constantly looking for opportunities to apply AI and has the power to develop a solution themselves. So this, I know AI transformation strategy is something that is definitely not something easy to do, but as you think through now, just reflecting of the sort of these different enablers, which ones are you going after? Think through that, and then also how would you approach that within the context of your organization? Is this something that, like, how ambitious is your AI transformation strategy? Is it something that you think can be done in 2 years, 3 years, what does that really look like? Try to think more of in an ambitious lens. What is the art of the possible for AI within your organization? And which enablers here do you think need to be pulled on maybe more significantly or weighted more significantly than others, so that you can really enable your team or your function or your line of business or your entire company to be able to be truly AI driven? For folks that are in more of a data science role, I think this is a little bit more real, but I think even if you are working in a marketing team, finance, HR, whichever function that you might be sitting in within your industry, this is something that we've worked with many different companies on, focusing truly on driving AI machine learning, even outside of a data science team. So think through that, and then also think through where you might be able to drive sort of a broader AI transformation strategy, even beyond your current function today, and being able to leverage some of these learnings throughout when thinking through that. So the last thing I just want to mention here, at DataRobot, we look at these enablers as honestly like a checklist. When we're meeting with customers, we talk through these pretty specifically about setting up an organization for success in moving towards an AI-driven enterprise. I mean, these, frankly, are non-negotiable in our eyes to really move throughout the machine learning lifecycle, from having an idea to getting it to production and monitoring it and governing it effectively. So if you're interested in hearing more about our platform, or would like to discuss what an AI-driven enterprise might look like to you in the context of your organization, feel free to reach out at datarobot.com or on our website or LinkedIn. I think this is something that we're super passionate about and love to discuss. We love coming up with ideas, but we also love figuring out how to tackle really hard problems. And I think the hardest problem with machine learning is adoption and being able to scale adoption. And that's something we've tried to work with our customers on and have been successful in a lot of different industries. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me directly, or again on datarobot.com. But thank you all for listening, for joining today, and feel free to stick around in the chat. I'll be answering some questions over Q&A.